This is my beer making day one. I haven't made beer for 2 years. That's a carboy, some of the equipment I'm getting ready to use here. This took me 4 hours, condensing it down to less than 4 minutes to show you what I did. There's some Clorox bleach, got to keep everything sanitized. It's a huge funnel, isn't it, with a filter on it. And then we've got a little siphon that'll get the beer from one spot to another. Some bags, a measuring device that'll tell you how much alcohol's in there, and then, of course, a thermometer. And I kind of shot myself in a mirror there, but I'm in the bathroom, in the bathtub, sanitizing all the equipment. First thing I want to do is get some grain in there to make the beer have a little more body, and that is some crystal malt. And it was ground at the beer store, and I'm going to put that in a bag like a tea bag. Well, it looks like an old sock here you're about to see in a moment, but it's a seeping bag, and it goes in a water. It's going to sit there and seep for about 45 minutes. Around 140. Got all the light malt extract. I think there's 6, 7, about 8 pounds of it that'll go in. And there's some hops. One's bittering and one's aroma hops. And, of course, I've added honey. Those are the ingredients that I'm going to have in the beer. Checking back about 45 minutes later, you can see how everything is kind of turning a little bit as that grain seeps out into the water. And in this pot is where I'm going to add all the 8 or 9 pounds of malt extract and the honey, getting ready to boil it. It's really gooey and sticky stuff, but that goes in there. And pour all that in and squeeze it out. And then eventually I'm going to take that bag and put that in there and pour that in there to add to it, so we'll get all that goodness from the grains. And you can see that going in there as the moisture from the grains go into the pot. The pot is then going to cook for about 45 minutes. Got to stir it up and get it boiling. That takes a while. And then we're going to add the hops. These are the bittering hops that are going in right when it starts to boil. And it'll boil for about 45 minutes and make the beer hoppy, as they say. That's what hops do, I guess. There it is, boiling after about 45 minutes. And what I'm going to do now is add, with the last 5 or 10 minutes, the aroma hops. We'll toss those in there. I got a bag of ice because as soon as I get done boiling this wort, I've got to cool it down to 80 degrees and then siphon it in there. I've now cooled it down to 80 degrees. I got the siphon. I can't show you how it actually worked because I needed 2 hands and I had one hand on the camera. But it basically went from there into the siphon, into that carboy. And there it is, done with the carboy full of the wort. Now I added some spring water, Deer Park spring water. I did run out of that, and then I did have to put some Durham's Finest water in there, and you can see that in there going up there. Then I measured it, and boy, it showed, I think the reading was 1.07, which translates to maybe some pretty potent potential beer. But before we can convert all the sugars into the beer, I had to add the yeast. So the yeast went in there, and we're looking for the yeast. It's liquid yeast, and I tried to cut it a couple times before I could open the bag. Once again, trying to do things one-handed is a little tricky, but I eventually got it open and poured it into the container to fill it up, shook it up to get some air in there, and that started the yeast starting to activate as it went into the wort. So once we get that all done, we poured it all in there. And then I capped it all up to seal it up, because then you want to seal it up and keep it pure without any other kind of stuff getting in there. And you can see the setup there. And there's the tube, because it's going to overshoot once it starts bubbling. That is day one. And then we're going to wait for it to start bubbling, and that'll happen on day 2.